men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands. The Prince, Chapter 18. The most dangerous man isn't the one who yells, it's the one who stops reacting. You're sitting at the table. It could be dinner. It could be a meeting. It could be next to her on the couch. Someone says something sideways, a subtle jab, a comment that cuts you down, disguised as a joke. You feel it. Your jaw tightens. Your stomach knots. Your heart speeds up just half a second more than normal. But you smile. You always smile. Because you understand the other person. Because you don't want conflict. Because you believe. Maturity means swallowing it. And this is where the invisible trap begins. You think you're being above it. But you're being predictable. And predictability is food for people who live off control. Machiavelli never wrote about empaths, but he wrote about power. And power never belongs to the most moral one. It belongs to the most strategic. There's a very specific moment that changes the game. It's not when the empath explodes. It's not when he confronts. It's not when he exposes anything. It's when he gets tired. Not tired of feeling, tired of allowing, and that moment is silent. No speeches, no dramatic goodbyes, no revenge, just an internal reorganization. The fed-up empath doesn't become cruel, he becomes unreadable. And that's more dangerous than any narcissist ever was, because the narcissist needs an audience. The integrated empath needs no one. Here's the hidden game no one ever explained to you. Every social interaction is an invisible courtroom. Someone accuses, someone defends, someone tries to prove their worth, and you almost always chose to be the lawyer for your own existence, explaining, justifying, clarifying, always trying to be understood. But power isn't about being understood. It's about controlling the frame. And while you play fair, someone else is playing to win. We've all been in a room where we lost power without anyone raising their voice. A comment you let slide. A joke that went too far. A boundary you didn't set. Nothing dramatic, but something inside you shrank. Today you're going to understand why the fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist. But there's a price. You'll have to let go of the identity of the predictable good man. You'll have to integrate parts of yourself that were always labeled as selfish. You'll have to accept that excessive kindness isn't virtue, it's leakage. If you keep watching, it won't be to feel better. It will be to lose a version of yourself. And when that version dies, you won't be accessible in the same way ever again. If this resonates, write in the comments, I don't leak anymore. Write it not for me. Write it as an internal decree. Now, let's enter the first law. There's a quiet belief that kept you predictable your entire life. If I'm fair, I'll be respected. If I'm understanding, I'll be valued. If I'm patient, I'll be recognized. Now picture the scene. A work meeting. You present an idea. Clear, structured, strategic. A co-worker interrupts, repackages your idea as if it were his. The boss nods approvingly. You notice. Feel the heat rise up your neck. Your body leans slightly forward, but you think, I won't create conflict over something small. And right there, you lost the frame. Not because you were wrong, but because you tried to be correct. Machiavelli left behind a truth few men accept. Men judge more with their eyes than with their hands. Power isn't merit, it's organized perception. The empath's moral illusion is believing intention creates authority. It doesn't. Authority is born from clear limits and implied consequences. The unconscious empath believes endurance is maturity. But enduring repeatedly teaches others that you endure, and anything that can be endured will be tested again. Now picture another scene, a family dinner. A relative jokes about you not having made it yet. Laughter, side glances, you feel your stomach tighten. But you respond with light irony, elegant self-deprecation. Everyone laughs. You came off as mature, but you came out smaller. The moral illusion works like this. It makes you confuse self-control with self-abandonment. You are trained to be the man who understands, the man who absorbs, the man who doesn't react. But there's a brutal difference between not reacting out of strength and not reacting out of fear of displeasing. Machiavelli had no patience for moral illusions. He understood something most people ignore. Virtue, when predictable, becomes a weapon against you. If everyone knows you'll always forgive, you become safe territory for invasion. The empath believes he's above the game, but he's still playing, just without strategy. Now, let's dismantle the trap. The moral illusion has 3 invisible pillars. First pillar, the need for approval disguised as kindness. Second pillar, fear of conflict disguised as maturity. Third pillar, an identity built around being different, better, ethical. But in the social courtroom, no one rewards invisible ethics. They reward posture. You've been in conversations where you felt you were being tested. Subtle jabs, eyes measuring your reaction, small interruptions, and you responded by over-explaining. Excessive explanation is a confession of energetic insecurity. Those with authority don't need to justify every position. Strategic silence creates weight. The old empath speaks to relieve tension. The sovereign empath uses tension to reposition power. This is where the first strategic move begins. Step 1. When provoked, don't respond right away. 3 seconds of silence, steady eye contact, body still. Step 2. Ask a short question that puts the weight back. Do you really think that? What exactly do you mean? Step 3. Stop again. Silence isn't empty. Silence is a frame. When you don't react the way they expect, the other person loses the script. And whoever loses the script loses control of the frame. Now pay attention. The fed-up empath isn't born from anger. He's born from saturation. There's an internal point where you realize, my kindness isn't being respected. It's being used. And that's where the collapse happens. You start seeing patterns. Relationships where you were always the one smoothing things over. Friends who only call when they need something. Partners who test your limits because they know you rarely enforce them. You notice something uncomfortable. You taught people to treat you this way. Not out of weakness, out of excess predictability. This is the most dangerous moment, because now you have 2 options: become bitter or become strategic. Most people choose bitterness. The sovereign empath chooses integration. But before that, the illusion has to die completely. There's a hidden fear inside you. If I change, they'll say I changed for the worse. Yes, they will, because you'll stop being convenient, and convenience is mistaken for kindness. Machiavelli knew this. It's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both. But he also knew something deeper. It's impossible to be respected when everyone knows you'll always give in. The collapse of the moral illusion isn't about becoming the villain. It's about stopping the game of the sophisticated victim. Now breathe. Think of a recent moment when you swallowed something. Feel it in your body, jaw, chest, shallow breath. That isn't maturity. That's trapped energy. And trapped energy turns into resentment. The fed-up empath decides something different. He decides that understanding doesn't mean unlimited access. He understands he can stay sensitive, but no longer available for exploitation. Second strategic move. Step 1. Identify a recurring situation where you always give in. Step 2. The next time it happens, say only this: "This doesn't work for me." No long explanation, no moral speech, no defense. Step 3. Hold the uncomfortable silence. Here's the crucial part. Those who are used to manipulating your empathy will react. It may come as sarcasm. It may come as guilt. It may come as playing the victim. Don't react. Silence again. You're not arguing morality. You're establishing structure. And structure redefines power. The collapse of the moral illusion marks the end of the man who needed to be seen as good, and the birth of the man who prefers to be respected in silence. But this is only the beginning, because when the illusion falls, you start to feel something you avoided your entire life: anger. And this is where we enter the second law. There's a part of you that was always treated like a flaw. Your potential coldness, your ability to cut, your ability to walk away without explaining. You were trained to fear it. They called it selfishness. They called it arrogance. They called it insensitivity. So you buried it. But what's repressed doesn't die. It rules beneath the surface. Machiavelli understood something most sensitive men reject. Anyone who can't tolerate being seen as hard will be used by the hard. Now picture an intimate scene, a relationship. She says something that crosses a line, not yelling, subtle devaluation, a comparison, a light dismissal, a jab at your ambition. You feel it. Your chest heats up. Your breath shortens. Your body wants to react. But you go into explanation mode. You try to clarify, try to align, try to make her understand. Strategic mistake. You answered an attack with emotional transparency, and constant transparency creates a map. Whoever has the map navigates you. Conscious cruelty isn't violence, it's restraint. It's the internal ability to say, "You no longer have automatic access to my inner world." Most men confuse kindness with the absence of a blade. But any man who doesn't integrate his blade becomes open ground. Conscious cruelty means I can cut, I choose when, and I don't feel guilty about it. There's a decisive moment. She says something that would normally pull you into an argument. This time you just look at her. Silence. Not tense, not theatrical, stable. Then you reply with only, "I hear you." And you change the subject. You didn't explain. You didn't defend. You didn't try to convince. You withdrew energy. And energy is power. The integration of cruelty begins when you accept something uncomfortable. You like being seen as good. And losing that image hurts. But image is persona. Machiavelli never trusted persona. He shaped perception, but he wasn't enslaved by it. You are enslaved by your own moral reputation. Conscious cruelty breaks that prison. It allows 3 internal moves. First, stop justifying decisions. Second, stop offering free emotional explanations. Third, stop negotiating basic boundaries. Social scene, group of friends. One of them constantly makes playful comments that put you down. Before, you laughed. Today, you just look at him and say that again. Silence. The group gets uncomfortable. He tries to soften it. You hold eye contact, no aggression, no smile. What just happened? You introduced cost. Manipulation only thrives where there is no cost. Conscious cruelty is introducing cost without losing composure. Here's the psychological mechanism. The narcissist, or any manipulator, operates through testing. Tests limits, tests reactions, tests resistance. If he finds constant absorption, he advances. If he finds predictable emotional consequences, he adapts. But if he finds cold illegibility, he hesitates, because he doesn't know where he's stepping. Conscious cruelty creates unstable ground for anyone who depends on predictability. Now let's go deeper. There's a difference between impulsive cruelty and strategic cruelty. Impulsive cruelty is explosion, emotional discharge, loss of control. Strategic cruelty is containment, a deliberate choice not to offer access. You don't block because you're angry. You block because the cycle is over. You don't respond immediately, not to punish, but to reorganize hierarchy. The old empath reacted to relieve internal tension. The integrated empath tolerates external tension. That's the turning point. Step 1. Identify someone who constantly tests your limits. Step 2. Choose a predictable future situation. Step 3. When the test comes, respond briefly and end the interaction. Example, I'm not continuing this conversation, and end it. No long explanation, no attempt to convince. Step 4. Hold through the attempt to reopen it. They'll try to pull you back into the emotional field. You stay steady, silence, presence, slow breathing. Conscious cruelty doesn't shout, it withdraws. There's a biological moment in this process. You feel guilt, your stomach tightens, your mind asks, am I overreacting? That's the old program trying to survive. You're not being cruel, you're being selective. Machiavelli taught that excessive mercy destroys princes, not because mercy is bad, but because mercy without structure invites betrayal. Now picture the hardest scene. Family. Someone uses guilt to control you. You always gave in. Today you say, I'm not doing that. Silence. They push. You hold it. No. No speech. No defense. The air gets heavy. You feel the discomfort, but you don't retreat. This is shadow integration. You didn't become a villain. You became a strategic adult. Conscious cruelty stops emotional leakage. And when the leakage stops, the game changes. But there's still a more dangerous step, because as long as you still react emotionally, there's still supply. The next law isn't about response, it's about total withdrawal of supply. And when that happens, some will panic. There's something you never noticed. You think the manipulator controls through force, but he controls through access. Access to your reaction, access to your explanation, access to your energy. As long as you react, he breathes. Now picture a simple scene, a message on your phone, a disguised jab, an attempt to pull you into an emotional debate. Before, you would have replied within minutes, long text, arguments, contained emotion. Now imagine it differently. You read it. Your body feels the impulse. Your finger almost touches the screen, and you stop. Silence. You don't reply, not as a childish game, but because you realized something brutal. Every automatic response keeps the cycle alive. The narcissist, or any control-dependent personality, lives off supply. Supply isn't just praise, it's reaction. Anger is supply. Explanation is supply. Defense is supply. Trying to prove yourself is supply. Withdrawing supply is the point where the fed-up empath becomes truly dangerous, because now he doesn't fight, he dries up the ground. Scene 2. Professional environment. Someone tries to provoke you in public, a subtle dig at your competence. Before, you would have defended yourself immediately. Now you look, breathe, and say only, "Noted." Then you go back to what you were doing. No justification, no micro-expression of irritation. What happened there was surgical. You didn't feed. You didn't place yourself as the defendant. You didn't accept the courtroom. You denied the stage. And those who live off the stage become disoriented when the audience leaves. There's a specific psychological moment few men can tolerate. The discomfort of not responding. Your body wants to resolve the tension, wants to clear the misunderstanding, wants to restore harmony, but forced harmony is disguised submission. Machiavelli understood that sometimes the most powerful move is the absence of a move. Withdrawal of supply has 3 levels. First level, reduced explanation. You stop narrating your internal state. You stop justifying simple decisions. You stop handing out free emotional maps. Second level, slower rhythm. You respond when you decide, not when you're provoked, not when you're pressured. A slow rhythm creates power asymmetry. Whoever controls time controls the frame. Third level, real indifference, not theatrical indifference, not revenge silence, structural indifference. You simply stop considering certain interactions relevant. Here's the biological part. At first you'll feel withdrawal. Yes. Withdrawal from validation. Withdrawal from resolution. Withdrawal from proving you're right. You'll notice how conditioned you were to needing immediate closure. But the sovereign empath understands something essential. Not every cycle deserves closure. Some deserve abandonment. Scene 3. Family again. A passive-aggressive comment about your choices. Before, you jump into debate. Now you keep eating. Silence. Someone asks, "Aren't you going to say anything?" You look calmly. No, and go back to your plate. That moment redefines your position in the invisible hierarchy. You're not seeking approval. You're not seeking victory. You're establishing that your center is non-negotiable. Manipulators panic when they realize they've lost emotional access. And panic produces 3 common attempts: stronger provocation, victimization, emotional seduction. You'll see it clearly. Dramatic messages, accusations of coldness, attempts to trigger guilt. If you fall for it, the cycle restarts. If you hold, the system collapses. Here's an advanced practice. Step 1. When you receive emotional provocation, don't respond for at least 24 hours if possible. Step 2. During that time, observe the internal urge to react. Don't fight it, just observe it. Step 3. If you decide to respond, use fewer words than expected. Example, "I understand your position." Nothing else. No debate, no counter-argument. Step 4. Return to your own agenda. The key isn't ignoring out of immaturity, it's refusing to be pulled into arenas that drain you. The old empath believed that resolving everything was a sign of maturity. The fed-up empath understands that unlimited availability is an invitation to exploitation. There's an internal sentence that needs to be born now. My silence is not weakness, it's selection. When you withdraw supply consistently, something curious happens. Some people drift away. Others try to come closer with a new posture. And you start to see who was really there for connection and who was there for consumption. Withdrawal of supply creates revelation. But there's still a final stage missing, because withdrawing access is power, but maintaining sovereignty under observation is authority. And the final law is where the empath stops being merely protected and becomes unshakable. The final stage isn't coldness, it's sovereignty. Coldness still reacts. Sovereignty observes. There's a point in the evolution of the fed-up empath where something shifts at the most subtle level. Your posture changes, your speaking pace slows, your eyes stop looking for validation. You walk into a room and you're no longer trying to be accepted. You're simply present. And presence, when it isn't needy, reorganizes invisible hierarchies. Now picture this, a social setting. Someone who used to test you realizes their jabs don't work anymore. They try again. A bit of irony. You look. Silence, not challenging, not threatening, just steady. Then you change the subject, as if what they said didn't carry enough weight to exist. The group feels it. Something shifted. Before, you were predictable. Now, you're unreadable. And unreadability is dangerous territory for anyone who depends on control. Machiavelli deeply understood the importance of perception. He knew you don't need to act all the time. You need to be impossible to anticipate. When no one knows exactly how you'll react, the urge to manipulate decreases, because manipulation requires calculation, and calculation requires predictability. The old empath was easy to read. He explained his feelings. He anticipated conflict. He signaled his intentions. Not anymore. Now you choose what you reveal. You talk less about plans, less about emotions, less about strategy. You act, and only afterward do you let the results speak. Intimate scene, a relationship. Before, you were constantly seeking alignment. Now you observe more than you talk. When you notice disrespect, you reduce investment. No announcement, no ultimatum, no drama. Your behavior changes before the conversation does. That's the real shift. You don't negotiate identity. You demonstrate pattern. Unreadability isn't permanent silence. It's strategic selectivity. You respond when you choose. You take a stand when necessary, but you no longer react from emotional impulse. There's a crucial moment here. Someone tries to label you. You've changed. You're cold. You're different. Before, that would trigger guilt. Now you simply say, yes. And you hold eye contact. No explanation. No softening. No defense. This is where sovereignty locks in, because you're no longer trying to control the external narrative. You're consolidating internal authority. The fed-up empath no longer seeks to be understood by everyone. He accepts that he'll be misinterpreted by those who lost access. And that doesn't destabilize him. Here's the deeper mechanism. When you stop leaking emotion, people are forced to confront their own. When you stop over-explaining, they have to sit with their own discomfort. When you stop reacting, they're left alone with their own intention, and many can't handle that. That's why the fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist. The narcissist needs attention. The sovereign empath needs nothing. He can love without dissolving. He can listen without absorbing. He can feel without yielding. Now picture the final scene. You're back in that meeting. Someone tries to take credit. You interrupt, not aggressively. You simply say, let's keep it clear who structured this. Firm tone, direct eye contact. Then silence. No speech, no justification, no visible tension. The room understands. You didn't attack, but you established territory. Unreadability doesn't mean inaction. It means precise action without emotional leakage. There's a final internal shift. You no longer measure value by the approval you receive. You measure it by alignment with your own boundaries. And when that happens, you become impossible to manipulate. Because manipulation depends on three things: guilt, fear of rejection, need for validation. When those three structures lose power, the game ends. Now we return to the beginning, the identity that dies, the man who confused kindness with unlimited access, the man who over-explained, the man who absorbed everything to avoid conflict, the man who needed to be seen as good, the identity that's born, the man who chooses when to give access, the man who integrates his blade, the man who withdraws supply without guilt, the man who holds silence without anxiety. You didn't become cruel, you became whole. And whole men aren't easy to move, not because they shout, but because they don't need to. If you made it this far, it wasn't entertainment. It was recognition. Now the decision is yours. Stay predictable or become unreadable. And remember, those who can't be read can't be controlled. If you made it this far, you're not at the same level of awareness you were at the beginning. And I respect that, because looking at your own patterns hurts. Admitting you were predictable hurts. Accepting that you need to integrate hardness hurts. And still, you stayed. Thank you for choosing clarity over comfort. Thank you for not walking away when the mirror got uncomfortable. Thank you for deciding that your energy will no longer be open territory. If this video stirred something in you, don't let it die tomorrow. Write in the comments, I'm no longer accessible to manipulation. This isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about declaring it to yourself. If this content made sense, share it with someone who's still trying to be understood by people who only want control. And remember, kindness without structure is exploitable weakness. Empathy with sovereignty is power. See you in the next one. Stay firm, stay calm, stay unreadable.